Hello and welcome to our session on to share live video and digital content to a large online audience. Basically, we're talking about hosting a webinar, hosting a virtual event, and there's lots of tools out there to do this, but we wanted to illustrate a new feature that came out in the last several months with regard to Microsoft Teams, which they call live events. So you all who are watching are actually currently seeing this through the live event functionality of Teams. And so we're going to illustrate today some of the nuances and gotchas, licensing, and some of the details around not just hosting the live event and using Teams, but also the peripheral around it as far as maybe using a third-party registration, as well as some of the follow-up. So that's actually some of the content we're going to cover today. Here's the bullet kind of list of things we're going to cover. One of the things that I would encourage, and I always like to kind of call out at this point, is there's a Q&A panel in the column there. Please go ahead, and if you have any questions now or throughout the presentation, we're going to do 30 minutes of content, and then we're going to open up for Q&A. So for those of you who have to sign off at 30 minutes, that's great. But if those of you can stick around for some Q&A, that's when we will handle the Q&A panel. So go ahead and start entering comments, questions in there, and we'll answer those at the end. But let's real quick have an overview. The purpose of this session, we're going to do a prescriptive, we don't have a lot of time, so we're going to do a prescriptive overview of how to run an event with Microsoft Teams live events. We're going to cover not only the live event functionality, but as well as the registration and follow-up suggestions. There's a couple gotchas and need to knows that are important. So if you're going to plan to use live events as an option, that you're going to want to get figured out first. And then we'll hit on the 4 parts of executing the event, and then we'll kind of walk through the demonstration of these different capabilities with some Q&A and recommended action items at the end. So looking forward to this session. It's actually really exciting. It was inspired by one of our existing clients who wanted to host one of their own live events, and they had a bunch of questions, and we thought that it would be valuable to share that with everyone else and get a session recorded for future use of everyone else. So, all right. Let's dig in. Again, 1 minute about Mytech. For those of you who might not know who we are a small, medium business technology consulting company. Over the last 20 years of being in business, we've learned a lot about what technology works together, and you could say we've developed a proven IT strategy that we know by implementing it achieves consistent results for our clients, which is, in the end, you just want things to work. So we understand that we don't necessarily remove every business challenge, because not every challenge is an IT challenge, not every business challenge is an IT challenge, but we at least try and remove the IT part of that equation, so you can focus on what's highest and best use of your time, as well as hopefully to make you more adaptable to other business challenges that are out there, such as the shelter at home and now the safe haven as we're kind of rolling back, being able to spend time on that. Our team, we coach them to make IT easy for you. Doesn't always mean that it makes IT easy for us, but that's the point. We need to try and make IT easy for you. And if we don't always achieve that, we know that, but we do ask that if you feel that we didn't make IT easy for you, please let us know. It's our opportunity to improve, so we can make sure we make IT easy for you in the future. Finally, putting this all together, our brand promise is that we've realized that our clients can achieve 4 times more value and productivity from their IT investments when we collaborate in this fashion. So if you'd like to learn more about that, reach out. We'd love to chat with you. Otherwise, let's move on. Enough about Mytech. That's not why you're here. Okay, so Teams live events. What do you need to know? Just a couple things there, and the 4 parts overview of actually the demonstration. So one of the things that we like to touch base, and we'll actually send in the follow-up, I have a couple of reference links that are Microsoft documents that you can reference that cover all this stuff in a lot more detail, but I didn't want to highlight them here, but we will send those out as a follow-up in the follow-up email after this session. But first and foremost, the live events feature is not included in the base Microsoft 365 licensing suite. So for instance, and this information I believe is the most current because it's what Microsoft has published, but there might be changes coming. So like for instance, at the moment, you need to have an enterprise E1, E3, or E5 license in order to host a live event. You can also do it if you have an education A3 or A5 license. And currently, if you're on the small business plans, it does not, at least what I found online, there is no current plan on the small business plans that include the live event capability. So, but the way it was written, I think that might be coming, but it'll probably be in one or more of the premium components. But the important thing to know about these licenses is that not everyone needs them. Only the organizers, presenters, and producers need to have the above licensing to host a live event. Not any of the attendees, no one else in your organization, just the people or the individuals that are either basically the organizers, presenters, or producers. The other thing that's a little bit of a nuance that it's a good thing to be aware of is that a live event can only be hosted in the Teams app, not in the browser. So while a lot of things can be done in the Teams browser, if you're accessing Teams via the browser, hosting a live event is not one of them. So be aware of that as you're thinking about or planning your live event. And finally, if you're hosting a live event for external guests, for instance, the public like we are today, anyone outside of our organization, there are some security permissions that do need to be adjusted by your administrator. This isn't typically the power user. This is back-end O365 permissioning changes that need to be done in order for you to host it externally. Again, the foundation of Microsoft 365 and Teams is security. And so Microsoft makes you basically have to be very intentional about any external sharing that you do inside of this platform. And so similarly, to host a live event and you want to extend it to the external world, you do need to adjust those permissions. It's not hard to do, but there are several of them that need to be changed in order to do it publicly. So that's a little bit of what you need to know. And as I mentioned, we'll send a couple follow-up in the follow-up email. We'll send a couple links that will help you, reference that information for future. All right. So now hitting on the 4 parts of executing a live event. We're going to cover the live event creation. You need to actually create the event inside of Teams. I'll show you how to do that. Then Stephanie's actually going to show you once you create the event, well, you want to have some sort of registration, especially if you're going to host it externally. If it's internal, you don't need that. But if you're hosting it externally and want to invite external folks, some sort of third-party or external event registration. Then we'll show you some of the nuances of hosting the live event. And then some event follow-up. So in the demonstration, I'm going to kind of touch on 1 and 3, or the live event creation and hosting, and then Stephanie's going to take it over and show some of the third-party event registration and event follow-up suggestions. So that's a little bit of the agenda we're going to come today, and we'll have a summary that says what to use or what we suggest using for these respective pieces after the demonstration. All right. Moving on, demonstrating live events and registration. Okay, so I've got some notes just to make sure that I don't forget some key details. So I'm going to actually go into the Teams app. So I'm in the Teams application. Notice this is our live event that we have scheduled on our calendar. We're in our demo environment that Microsoft allows us to use. And I'm in the Teams app. I'm in the calendar function of the Teams app. So if you're following along, you click on the calendar. And if you're going to create a meeting, going all the way over here, instead of hitting new meeting, because that'll just set up a regular Teams meeting, if you have the permissions and you hit this little drop down over on the side, it allows you to then notice there's a drop down for the live event. You will only see this option if you have the licenses associated with your account to be able to create or host, be a presenter, organizer, or producer of a live event. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click that. All right, now the first one that pops up, basic, it almost looks like a calendar invite. If you have locations, rooms set up in your tenant, this will show up. We don't have anything built out in this demo tenant, but if you click on that, you have rooms like conference rooms that you may have set up in your calendaring. Those will show up here, just to give you an example. So I'm going to do a test, a live event, and I'm going to schedule this for, let's just say, tomorrow, and we'll keep it from 1:30 to 2. And if I want, I can provide information, etc., about this event here, but for the sake of this conversation, this is not where we are going to be hosting and putting that information. But the next step before I move on is just to invite the right folks. So by default, because I am the one who hit the create live event up here, I am default the organizer. Okay, so that the organizer is just the person who created the event. So that's important because the organizer is the only person who can make these changes that I'm going to show you. If you've invited a producer or a presenter, they can join the meeting as a producer or presenter, but they cannot make some of the edits that I'll show you here in a moment. So if I'm going to invite, I'm going to invite Stephanie, for example. So we'll hit Stephanie, and notice I have the option once I've added Stephanie to choose, do I want to make her a producer or a presenter? Okay, so Stephanie historically has been a producer. I forgot to mention that we have Megan producing today because Stephanie's one of the presenters. So I'm gonna hit producer. And then I'm going to add Gerald as an example. Gerald's our CTO, and I'm going to add Gerald as a presenter. Okay, so now I've got myself as the organizer producer. In fact, I want to make myself a presenter. So that's another thing to drop down because by default, as an organizer, it creates you as a producer. So I'm going to choose myself as a presenter. So now we've got a couple presenters and one producer. The only thing you really need as a minimum that we recommend is one producer and one presenter. That's really the minimum that we recommend in order to effectively host a live event. All right, so moving on, I'm going to click next. So now, the next step is looking at the permissions. So if you we have adjusted the security permissions to enable the public settings. But if you haven't done that, you will not even see the public option. You will basically see either people in groups that'll be within your organization, or you will see org-wide, which means pretty much anyone in your organization can attend. This is also where we actually host our some of our company Q&As so that we basically limit to the number of people that can talk. So over to the Q&A panel, which we'll talk about in a second. But it's important to look at the live event permissions as far as what are you intending to do. If you're planning on hosting externally, all you got to do is click here on public. Notice that that option is selected. But again, this option will not even be available unless if you've edited the security permissions on the back end. And I'm not going to get into those today, but we can help you with that if that's something you need. Okay, now I'm going to say, how are you going to host this event in Teams? So these are some of the options you want to check. Notice, I think it's a little odd, but the Q&A panel is by default not selected. So if you want to allow Q&A, which I feel is most of the time you would want to allow, depending on the event you're running, I would recommend selecting this. The other option I've been turning off because it's in preview is I've been turning off captions. You don't have to, but if you want to do captions, you can do the spoken language, and you can translate up to several different languages through this process. Again, this is in preview as noted by Microsoft here, but that's an option you can turn on, as well as whether or not recording is available to producers and presenters, or if you want to make it available to the attendees, etc. So these are the options you can select. Again, the biggest one that I would be aware of is that the Q&A panel, for whatever reason, is by default turned off. I don't think that's a back-end administrative setting, but it's turned off. And so I would recommend selecting that, which is what we've done. So now, and the other thing is that it gives you a URL for support. We just put in our website as far as what that looks like. So that'll direct people to our website if they ask for support through the panel at all. So now I'm going to go ahead and click schedule down here. Now it's creating our test live event. So what it does is it takes me to the screen that allows me to get the attendee link. So this link is then what we end up using. So I can just click on this, for example, and it will copy it. And so it's copied to the clipboard. And so this is something that if we want to, for the external invitation, that's what we use to send to folks. But then anybody who is on this list here, basically when they come in, they click join, and that will actually join them to the meeting and as their respective role. So that's just some of the basics there. One of the things that I'd also like to mention is, what if you made a mistake and you accidentally selected the wrong option? So at this juncture, as an organizer, again, only as the organizer, you will see this edit option. So I'm going to go ahead down here and click the edit option. As you'll see, it brings me back to the previous screen. So this is where I can add additional presenters or producers. Also, if I go down here to the settings option, it allows me to change these permissions here. One of the mistakes that we made in early April is that I accidentally, when I created the event, selected the org-wide option instead of the public option. And then when people tried to join the event, they couldn't because requires a sign-in. So one of the things that I would maybe put on your checklist is, and we've been doing it lately, is double check the settings before you start the live event. You can make edits to this section all the way up until you start the live event. So when you first saw the event go live and the content and the video, up until you click go live, you can edit these changes. And these settings. The other thing that I like to note is that I'm going to go back here. Close that. Sorry, I'm going to click in here again. The attendee link. If you make changes to those settings, you don't have to change the attendee link because it's basically changing those settings in the back end. But you can only do it before you actually go live with the event. So that's just a little trick, a little mistake that we made, a little lesson that we learned to work on. So, okay, that is really talking about creating the live event in that regard. So I'm going to go ahead and hit close on that. So now we have the live event here. I showed how to get the attendee link, and I showed how to edit the settings after the fact. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint here, because one of the things about live events, as I mentioned, you can only host it in the Teams application. So while I have Teams up here in the browser, if I try and join this live event, I don't believe it's going to let me do it. Let me try it. Yes. So producing or presenting a live event is not available in the web yet. So this is where you can join as an attendee or download the app. But the problem is I'm already in the app. So this is one of the things I illustrated earlier, is that you can't join as a producer or presenter yet in the browser. So that's something that I can't actually show in real time in the browser. So that's why we put some slides together for you to illustrate that setting. So I'm going to go ahead and close on that and then come back to the PowerPoint. And so actually, so here's content that Stephanie put together. So as a producer, what you're seeing all right now is what is the presentation. So when you see this content on one side and the video on this other side, actually I think it's here and here in reverse. So that's what you see as an attendee, but this is what you see as a producer. You basically see that there is two screens. You got a couple options down here, and the live event is content over here. Now notice you see this send live functionality over here. So if you take the content and move it up, and I'll show you how to walk through it, and then you say send live, and then you click start the event. And so those are the steps you have to go through before you actually start the event and for people to see the content. So I'm going to move over. So two ways to view. As Stephanie noted here, you can view in full screen mode, or you can view with what you're seeing right now, which is the content and the video. That's basically what this little indicator here denotes, or the other one, which is just full screen. One of the nuances about that is you can have content and video, or you can have video, but you can't have two video. So you can't have video here and video here. You can either have just content and the video, or just video. That's one of the nuances at the moment of Teams. Again, Microsoft reserves the right to change this stuff over time, but that's an example of just some limitations at the moment. Moving on. So here's an example of where we've selected this option. So we want to have content and video. So you see we've picked the content from down here. We've selected the video to go here, and then send go live. So this is actually what's showing right now. For example, where this is live and it's showing that this is live, but the producer is queuing this up next. So basically Megan at the moment is doing something very similar behind the scenes as we work to switch this over to Stephanie. Because right now, as I'm presenting, this is what she sees, but she's also getting things ready over here to be able to hit send live, and then that goes live for everybody. So that's what the producer can do behind the scenes, is get content queued up and video queued up on this other panel to get ready to then click send live when it's ready to go live. So kind of a cool feature as a producer, because this is what you are all seeing, and the producer in the back end is getting this all queued up. All right. Moving on, so here's the Q&A you'll see in the upper corner. one of the things I like about the Q&A is that I would recommend if you have one presenter and one producer, that the producer is the person to monitor that. This is what the producer sees, and the presenter can see this too. But if you also have multiple presenters, you could also have a presenter staffing this or looking at this or responding to the Q&A. So the Q&A panel here looks like this, and you will get new. And as a producer or presenter, you can also choose to publish it. So it'll come in here and you can correspond with folks as far as managing the Q&A panel before you choose to click this button to publish and make it public for everyone on the event to be able to see. So you could correspond back and forth, and it won't actually go live until you choose to publish. And the correspondence that you had here doesn't actually show up when you publish. So it's a nice little feature. You can also dismiss questions if it's something that you answered offline, or if something that's not appropriate for the event or the presentation, you can just answer them and dismiss it. So you really have a lot of control as the publisher, or excuse me, the producer or the presenter, to be able to choose what the audience sees and being able to manage the communication. So that's the Q&A panel. Moving on, the other thing that's nice is meeting chat. So one of the things that producers and presenters will see is the meeting chat, but the meeting chat is actually private. So it's only private to the organizer, producer, presenters. So the audience, the attendees do not see that. So this is a way where if there's in particular, if there's multiple presenters on the event, they could be chatting back and forth and having some private conversation relative to maybe what's going on without making it public to the entire audience. So that's something that all of you seeing it right now will not see the chat, but there is a meeting chat as part of hosting a live event that allows, just like the Teams chat that you're used to, that's only specifically for the producers or the presenters. Good little nuance. So, all right, I'm going to go back to the slide here and tee it up for Stephanie. So Stephanie, do you want to take over and show how to do the event registration, as well as some of the follow-up nuances that you've experienced? And I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. There we go. Okay. So get that queued up for Stephanie to be able to see. Stephanie sharing. There we go. Stephanie, you might be muted.
Thanks, Nate. Yep. Awesome. Thanks. Hi, everybody. Yeah, so just wanted to go through a couple different nuances surrounding the live events. So Nate really went through how to set them up and how to produce them. But we, in marketing especially, we want to make sure to do a little prep work before to market and get attendees to that event, as well as afterwards with some of the follow-up. So just going to kind of go through some of the techniques and programs that we use here at Mytech and kind of give you a little context as to why. So first of all, that link that Nate was showing you that you can share for attendees, there is no registration required to use Microsoft Live events. If someone has that link, they're going to be able to join that live event, and Microsoft will actually capture their email as well. And at the end, you'll be able to download an attendee report to see that who everybody was that joined the event. However, I strongly suggest having some sort of a registration platform. Reason being is, especially for the follow-up and even pre-event, like reminding people of the event and sending the link, providing calendar downloads for them to be able to add it to their calendar. There's just a lot of ways that we would want to remind people of the event and things like that, and doing all the follow-up. So we are currently using Eventbrite, as most of you registered probably on our website through embedding Eventbrite into it. So I just wanted to kind of go through a couple of the nuances that we've found with using Eventbrite. It's a great, easy, free tool that you can use to capture that registration. So here I just created a demo event. The nice thing with Eventbrite is it gives you really easy step-by-step for creating the event. So you just need to have obviously a title, a summary, and a description here. I'm going to go ahead and save that content. And then it allows you, when you select that you're going to be doing a virtual event, what's really nice is it allows you to create like an online event page. So here I can add an image. Here's where I can actually add that link that Microsoft Teams live event gave me, and host a website so that when people are ready to join, they go to a website. Let's see if I can preview it here. So this is what would actually link in an email to say, hey, are you ready to join the event? many of you came to this page, and then you would just click right here to join the event. One thing that we noted is this isn't super, people were not understanding that that's how you join the event. So one thing that I've been doing is you can just add a line of text that says like, click here to join event. And then I've been hyperlinking that text, and then I make it larger, and then I've been putting it right above it. Show you what that looks like, and it would be hyperlinked because it gives the attendees just one more way. If they, then this would be hyperlink. I should have hyperlinked it for the demo, but if they didn't know that this would bring them to the live event, now they know that clicking here would join. So that was just one of the nuances that we found, is that there was a little bit of confusion with that. So adding maybe just some text or directions onto that page is helpful. All right, go back to Eventbrite here. The next thing that I like about Eventbrite, and we've used this for many of our other events as well, is that you can set tickets. You can set like a maximum of tickets. So if your events can only, maybe you only want to have 30 or 40 people in your event, you can set minimums and maximums as well. So that's really nice with it. The biggest thing I like about Eventbrite is that it automatically does all of the event reminders. So I'm going to go ahead and publish the event here so I can quickly show you that when you publish, it automatically sets up a 2 days before the event reminder, a 2 hour before the event reminder, and a 5 minutes. So if I go down to, it's under, sorry, 1 second here, close. All right, and it's not showing it for me, of course. There it is, emails for attendees. All right, so I just wanted to show you that what it does is it automatically generates these emails. Here it is. So you don't have to code or add links or anything like that. It's going to automatically create these emails. It automatically inserts a link to that web page, and then we'll send them out for you. So it's a really easy way to create an event and then all the pre-event marketing as well. So now that we've got our registrations, everybody's set to join the event, what about after the event? So what I suggest is we use YouTube. You could also use Microsoft Stream if you're going to be sharing this content internally, because Microsoft Stream is kind of like an internal YouTube to your organization. But if you want to share it externally, we recommend YouTube. So you can upload your videos to YouTube. I'm going to pause this real quick and show you just a couple cool features within YouTube that you can do. So number one, when we host these events, sometimes there's a half an hour to 45-minute Q&A after the event, and we don't necessarily want to share that on the YouTube. So within YouTube, there is an editor option here. So when you click the editor, you're able to go in and actually trim the video. So I can upload the full hour video, but then I can actually trim it down to 30 minutes. One thing to note, when you do that and click save, it takes about 3 to 4 hours for YouTube to render it. So if you're planning on sending the video out in the next 10 minutes or 15 minutes, it's still going to show the full length of the video. But after it's rendered, it gives you a warning too of like 3 to 4 hours. You should be able to see just the trimmed part of the video. One other thing I really like about YouTube, if I go back here, is that you can add playlists and suggested video content, which is really nice when you're creating kind of a series of videos. So that's what I would recommend for sharing those videos. Once you get it into YouTube, I'm actually going to go back in here. It's going to give you a link. So now this link is what you can use to share. So there's a couple different ways that you can go about doing that. We actually host all of our recorded videos on our website. So here's, we use WordPress and we use Elementor as a kind of a designer. So you can simply go up, grab that you want to embed a video, and then drop that down in there. And then most websites, all you have to do is put the link to YouTube and it's going to upload it right in there. So that's one way that you can post it to your website, and then you can let attendees know to go to the website to see content. We do that as well as send follow-up emails. So whether you're using MailChimp or we use HubSpot or any email tool, we go ahead and get a follow-up email with, asking for survey data. So we're going to be sending you an email here shortly asking you for feedback on the event. Along with, I would just go in here and hyperlink that YouTube video link. So now that you and anybody who maybe wasn't able to attend, because I'm going to send this to anybody who registered, now they'll have access to that video content. So those are just a couple of the best practices and ways that we found success with getting attendees able to register and then post follow-up. So Nate, anything to add to that? I think you're muted now, Nate.
Yeah, I was just trying to share my screen so that I can actually go back and do that. So I'm going to share my screen. Share that. Okay, so all right, so yeah, no, that's basically everything that we were hoping to cover. Stephanie, I know that we went through that quickly, but the reason why we wanted to highlight that and kind of go very prescriptive is to create this summary for you, that it's hosting the event. If you're trying to host it externally, Teams doesn't do some of the follow-up, some of the event registration, some of the hosting if you're trying to host that externally. So we wanted to try and have a more complete option for you and explain that versus just covering what's available by hosting the live event. So as a summary, if you're going to create the live event, you can create the event in Teams in the app or the browser. From an event registration perspective, we actually use Eventbrite and HubSpot. You can use MS Forms. Even if you want to use MS Forms to create a registration, that's fine too. Hosting the live event, you actually have to use the Teams app, not the browser, as we mentioned earlier. And we do recommend with at least one presenter and one producer. And then from event follow-up perspective, keeping track of the people who registered. We use HubSpot or some other email tool, as Stephanie mentioned, like MailChimp, as well as hosting the video on YouTube, or if it's just internal, maybe hosting it just on your Microsoft Stream app. So those are some of the basics as far as the summary. Again, understanding what you're trying to accomplish here with potentially with Teams live events. Are you trying to host it internally? Because we actually, when you have the larger your organization, the one thing that Teams Live Events does is that the audience is muted by default and they can only really interact via the Q&A. And when you have more than probably 20 or 30 people that you're trying to get on an event, that's nice, because Teams, otherwise if you're holding a Teams meeting, it doesn't really give you those controls. So if that's one of the problems you're trying to solve, if you're trying to host it externally, remember that there's security permissions on the back end to be able to enable for that to happen. If there's any key takeaways that you have, write them down, and let's take some baby steps if this is something you want to do. We are more than happy, by the way, to help you with that. Again, if you're already working with us and you need us to make some of those adjustments for you, just send a ticket, submit a request, and we'll get that taken care of for you. As well as a couple things that we've adapted to as for future events, just for sake of noting it, we're down to 1 session a week versus 2 sessions a week, by the way. We've also adapted to the first Friday of the month, we are hosting a power user session. So if you or any of the folks that you're aware of in your organization are really those 1 or 2, maybe a handful of people that are going to be the go-to folks relative to Microsoft 365, we're going to get into more backend structure and some of the security permissions and some of the technical details that will help them be a good liaison and inside of the organization. So that's on the first Friday of the month. And the second Friday of the month is for team members. This is for anybody, everyday people trying to use O365 and any frustrations or challenges or struggles you're having with O365. It's an open forum where we'll be just answering live questions as long as the questions keep coming. So we'll be doing that on the second Friday of the month, and the first Friday is the open forum. So stay tuned for more events every week, and we've got them mapped out all the way through mid-June at the moment. And for those of you who joined, I want to say thank you for attending, for watching this on the Teams live events. Again, I'm Nathan Austin, and Stephanie was presenting, and Megan Forrest was the producer today. So thanks for joining us. If you can stick around for the Q&A, great. But if you have to sign off now, again, thank you very much for attending. Megan, can we open it up for